Fearmongering is a manipulative tactic that uses fear to influence public opinion, control behavior, and achieve political, social, or financial goals. By playing on people's natural fears, those engaging in fearmongering often exaggerate threats, distort facts, or present worst-case scenarios to create a sense of impending doom. The goal is to make individuals feel so afraid that they are more likely to adopt the desired behavior, support a particular agenda, or reject opposing viewpoints. Fear is a primal emotion, hardwired into the human brain as a survival mechanism. When we perceive danger, our body's fight or flight response is triggered, leading us to make quick decisions aimed at ensuring our survival. However, this same mechanism can be exploited by those who wish to manipulate us. Fearmongering hijacks this natural response, keeping people in a constant state of anxiety or panic so that they act impulsively without rationally assessing the situation. While fearmongering is common in many aspects of society, such as politics, media, and advertising, it is especially prevalent in times of uncertainty or crisis. When people are unsure of what will happen next, fear can easily be used to control the narrative, stoke division, and prevent individuals from thinking critically. This video explores the origins of fearmongering, the psychological principles that make it so effective, and the various ways it has been used throughout history. We will also discuss how to recognize fearmongering tactics and ways to resist their influence. Fearmongering works so well because it taps into fundamental aspects of human psychology, exploiting our most basic instincts and biases. Fear is a powerful emotion that has been essential to human survival for millions of years. When faced with danger, the brain triggers the fight-or-flight response, releasing adrenaline and cortisol into the bloodstream to prepare the body to either confront the threat or flee from it. This reaction is automatic and happens in milliseconds, giving us the ability to act quickly when confronted with danger. However, the modern world is full of complex, abstract threats that are not as immediately clear or physical as the dangers our ancestors faced. Fearmongering exploits this fight-or-flight response by creating an exaggerated sense of danger, making people feel that their safety or well-being is under imminent threat. By keeping individuals in a heightened state of anxiety, fearmongers can influence decisions and behaviors, prompting people to take actions they might not otherwise take if they were thinking more rationally. Human beings are naturally wired to focus more on negative information than positive information. This is known as negativity bias, the tendency to pay more attention to negative experiences or threats than positive ones. From an evolutionary standpoint, this makes sense. Our ancestors who were more attuned to danger were more likely to survive and pass on their genes. But in today's world, where we are bombarded with news and information, this bias can be easily exploited. Fearmongers use negativity bias to their advantage by emphasizing the worst-case scenarios or the most frightening aspects of an issue. Because people are more likely to pay attention to negative information, these fear-based messages often get more attention than more balanced or positive messages. The availability heuristic is a cognitive bias in which people estimate the likelihood of an event based on how easily they can recall examples of that event. In other words, if a threat or danger is frequently mentioned in the news or by influential figures, people will believe it is more likely to occur, even if the actual risk is low. Fearmongering leverages the availability heuristic by continuously reminding people of a particular danger or threat, often inflating its likelihood and severity. The more people hear about a potential danger, whether it's crime, terrorism, or economic collapse, the more likely they are to believe it will happen to them, even if the statistical odds are low. Fearmongering can also lead to groupthink and social conformity, where individuals suppress their doubts or critical thinking in favor of adopting the beliefs or behaviors of the larger group. When a fear-based message is repeated often enough and adopted by a majority of people, individuals may feel pressured to conform to the dominant narrative, even if they have reservations or question the accuracy of the claims being made. In this way, fear-mongering can create echo chambers, where only one perspective or narrative is allowed to flourish. Dissenting voices are either silenced or dismissed as dangerous or irresponsible, leading to an environment where critical thinking is stifled and fear-based decisions dominate. Politics has long been fertile ground for fear-mongering. Politicians and political parties often use fear to rally their supporters, discredit their opponents, and push through controversial policies. By presenting themselves as protectors against real or perceived threats, political leaders can build loyalty and sway public opinion in their favor. Creating an us versus them mentality. One of the most common tactics in political fear-mongering is creating an us versus them mentality. By painting opponents as dangerous or evil, political leaders can rally their base around a common enemy. This tactic is especially effective when the other group is portrayed as a threat to national security, culture, or values. For example, during election campaigns, politicians may frame their opponents as untrustworthy or radical, suggesting that if they win, the country will descend into chaos or moral decay. This rhetoric stirs fear in voters, making them feel that they must vote for the candidate who promises to protect them from these threats. This demonization of the other often leads to polarization, where compromise and rational debate are replaced by fear-based loyalty and hostility toward opposing views. In extreme cases, it can even lead to violence or discrimination against the targeted group. The politics of security. Fear-mongering is frequently used to justify aggressive security measures, especially in the aftermath of terrorist attacks, violent crimes, or military conflicts. By emphasizing the need for protection, politicians can push through policies that expand surveillance, limit civil liberties, or increase military spending, all in the name of national security. The law and order narrative is a classic example of this tactic. Political candidates often use fear of crime to justify harsher policing tactics, longer prison sentences, or increased funding for security forces. While these measures may appeal to voters' desire for safety, they often come at the cost of individual freedoms or fairness within the justice system. Manipulating economic fears. Another area where fear-mongering thrives in politics is the economy. Politicians may stoke fear by warning of economic collapse, job loss, or hyperinflation if their opponents' policies are implemented. By presenting their own economic policies as the only solution to avoid financial disaster, politicians can gain support from voters who fear for their financial future. This tactic was notably used in political campaigns throughout history, where candidates predicted economic ruin if their opponents were elected, even if such outcomes were unlikely or exaggerated. Fear of financial instability can be a powerful motivator, causing voters to prioritize economic safety over other considerations. Historical examples of political fear-mongering. Fear-mongering has played a significant role in many major political movements throughout history. In some cases, it has been used to justify war, restrict civil liberties, or suppress dissent. For example, in the early 20th century, the Red Scare in the United States capitalized on fear of communism. Political leaders and the media portrayed communists as an existential threat to American values and democracy, leading to widespread fear and paranoia. This fear-mongering resulted in government crackdowns on suspected communists, even when there was little or no evidence to support the accusations. Another example is the use of fear-mongering during the Cold War, where both the United States and Soviet governments portrayed the other as a mortal threat to their survival. This fear shaped foreign and domestic policies for decades, leading to an arms race, proxy wars, and an atmosphere of constant anxiety. Fear-mongering in media. The media plays a significant role in amplifying fear-mongering by disseminating fear-based messages and highlighting the most sensational, fear-inducing stories. Whether for higher ratings, clicks, or political influence, media outlets often prioritize stories that provoke fear over more balanced or informative reporting. Sensationalism and fear-based reporting. Fearmongering is often facilitated by sensationalist reporting, where media outlets focus on dramatic or shocking stories that evoke fear. This is especially common in 24-hour news cycles, where competition for viewers' attention is fierce, and fear-based stories often generate higher ratings. Crime, terrorism, natural disasters, and political scandals are frequently over-reported, with media coverage often exaggerating the frequency or severity of these events. While these are legitimate news topics, the relentless focus on fear-inducing stories can distort public perception, making people believe that the world is more dangerous than it actually is. For example, studies have shown that despite declining crime rates in many areas, the media continues to focus heavily on violent crime, leading many people to believe that they are at greater risk of being victimized than they actually are. Echo chambers and fear amplification. In today's digital age, social media platforms and online news sites have become breeding grounds for fear-mongering. Algorithms often amplify content that provokes strong emotional reactions, such as fear or anger, leading to the creation of echo chambers where fear-based narratives dominate. In these echo chambers, individuals are exposed to a narrow range of viewpoints, reinforcing their existing fears and making it more difficult to engage with alternative perspectives. This can create a feedback loop where fear-mongering messages are continuously amplified and spread to larger audiences. Fear as a tool for political influence. Many media outlets have political affiliations or ideological leanings, and fear-mongering is often used as a tool to sway public opinion in favor of their preferred candidates or policies. By selectively covering stories that promote fear, media outlets can push their audience towards particular viewpoints, often at the expense of nuanced, fact-based reporting. For example, a news network that supports a tough-on-crime political candidate might focus disproportionately on stories about crime, even if crime rates are not actually increasing. This creates the impression that the candidate's tough policies are necessary, even if the data does not support this conclusion. Chapter 4. Fearmongering in advertising and marketing. Fearmongering is not limited to politics and the media. It is also a common tactic used in advertising and marketing to sell products or services. By creating a sense of urgency or highlighting potential dangers, companies can manipulate consumers into making purchases based on fear rather than need. One of the most effective ways advertisers use fear is by playing on concerns about health and safety. By emphasizing potential risks or dangers, companies can convince consumers that their product is necessary to protect themselves or their families. For example, an advertisement for home security systems might show images of burglars breaking into homes, stoking fear that viewers are vulnerable to such attacks. The ad implies that the only way to avoid this danger is to purchase the security system, even if the likelihood of a break-in is relatively low. Similarly, pharmaceutical companies may use fear-based advertising to promote medications by highlighting the dangers of untreated conditions, sometimes exaggerating the risks to create a sense of urgency. Consumers, driven by fear of illness or death, may be more likely to buy the product without considering alternative treatments or the actual likelihood of the condition occurring. Fearmongering is also used in marketing through the creation of artificial scarcity or urgency. Advertisers often use phrases like limited time only or while supplies last to create the fear that if consumers do not act quickly, they will miss out on a valuable opportunity. These tactics prey on the fear of missing out, or FOMO, prompting consumers to make impulsive purchases based on the belief that they will regret not taking advantage of the offer. In reality, these deals are often designed to manipulate buying behavior rather than reflecting true scarcity. Advertisers also tap into the fear of social exclusion by suggesting that consumers who don't purchase a particular product or service will be left out or judged by their peers. For example, ads for luxury cars, designer clothing, or high-end gadgets often imply that owning these products is necessary to achieve social status or acceptance. This type of fear-mongering exploits people's desire to fit in and avoid being seen as inferior or outdated. By creating the fear that they will be left behind if they don't buy the latest product, advertisers can drive sales through emotional manipulation. Chapter 5. Fear-mongering in social movements and activism. Fear-mongering is also prevalent in social movements and activism, where organizations and leaders may use fear-based messaging to rally support for their cause. While fear can be a powerful motivator for social change, it can also distort the issues, lead to extremism, and stifle meaningful dialogue. Fear as a motivator for activism. Many social movements are born out of fear. Fear of injustice, inequality, or environmental destruction. Fear can be a powerful motivator for activism, as it drives people to take action in the face of perceived threats. For example, civil rights movements often arise in response to fear of systemic oppression, while environmental movements may be motivated by fear of ecological collapse. While fear can be a legitimate response to real dangers, some leaders or organizations may exploit these fears to push their own agendas or gain more followers. By exaggerating the severity of the threat or demonizing opposing views, these movements can create a climate of fear that stifles debate and encourages blind loyalty. Polarization and extremism. Fear-mongering in social movements can also lead to polarization and extremism, where opposing sides become more entrenched in their views and unwilling to compromise. When fear is used to portray the other side as evil or dangerous, it becomes difficult to have productive conversations or find common ground. For example, in debates over immigration or gun control, fear-mongering tactics are often used to paint the opposition as a threat to national security or individual freedoms. This can lead to heightened tensions where both sides feel that their way of life is under attack, making compromise or collaboration nearly impossible. Silencing dissent. In some cases, fear-mongering can be used within social movements to silence dissent or discourage critical thinking. Leaders or activists may frame any questioning of the movement's goals or methods as a betrayal of the cause, creating an atmosphere where followers are afraid to speak out for fear of being ostracized or labeled as traitors. This type of fear-based loyalty can prevent movements from evolving or addressing internal issues, ultimately undermining their effectiveness. Chapter 6. The dangers of fear-mongering. While fear can be a useful tool for raising awareness or motivating action, fear-mongering often leads to negative consequences both for individuals and society as a whole. Erosion of rational decision-making. One of the most significant dangers of fear-mongering is that it erodes rational decision-making. When people are constantly bombarded with fear-based messages, they may become overwhelmed and unable to think critically about the issues at hand. Instead of weighing the pros and cons or seeking out reliable information, they may make impulsive decisions based on their emotional response to fear. For example, fear-mongering during election campaigns can lead voters to make decisions based on exaggerated threats, rather than carefully considering the candidate's policies and qualifications. This can result in leaders being elected who are not truly representative of the public's best interests. Manipulation and exploitation. Fear-mongering is often used to manipulate and exploit people's emotions for the benefit of those in power. Whether it's politicians seeking to gain votes, companies trying to sell products, or activists pushing an agenda, fear-based tactics often prioritize the interests of the few over the well-being of the many. This manipulation can lead to policies, purchases, or social movements that are not in the public's best interest, creating long-term consequences that may be difficult to undo. Division and polarization. Fearmongering also contributes to division and polarization within society. By framing issues in terms of extreme threats, fearmongers create an environment where compromise and dialogue are seen as weaknesses and opposition is treated as dangerous. This polarization can deepen societal divides, making it harder for people to work together on solutions to complex problems. Instead of fostering understanding and cooperation, fearmongering drives wedges between different groups, leading to an us versus them mentality that is difficult to overcome. Conclusion: how to recognize and resist fearmongering. Fearmongering is a powerful tactic that exploits our deepest fears to manipulate our behavior, but it's important to remember that not all threats are as dire as they may seem. By learning to recognize fear-based tactics and thinking critically about the information we receive, we can resist the influence of fearmongering and make more informed decisions. Recognizing fearmongering. Here are some signs that you may be encountering fear-mongering exaggerated threats. If a message consistently highlights worst-case scenarios or exaggerates the severity of a threat, it could be a sign of fear-mongering. Emotional appeals. Fearmongers often rely on emotional language and imagery to bypass rational thinking and provoke a fear-based response. Lack of evidence. Fear-based messages that lack solid evidence or rely on vague claims are often designed to manipulate rather than inform. Resisting fearmongering. To resist fearmongering, it's important to practice critical thinking and seek out multiple sources of information. When faced with fear-based messaging, ask yourself, what is the evidence? Are the claims being made backed up by reliable data? Or are they based on speculation or anecdotal evidence? Who benefits from this message? Consider whether the person or organization promoting the fear-based message has something to gain from your fear, such as political power or financial profit. By questioning fear-based narratives and making decisions based on facts rather than emotions, we can avoid being manipulated by fearmongers and contribute to a more informed and rational society.
Remember to like and subscribe for more video content. Sapiens quae vigilat.